Hello, thank you for coming and attending this invasive plant management certificate program for landscape professionals. And today we're going to focus on exotic invasive shrubs and vines in Virginia. My name is Rita Peralta, and I am an ecologist with the Fairfax County Park Authority. And I am part of a team that's with their natural resource branch. And I focus on maintaining habitat restorations. And as you can imagine, a lot of this is part of dealing with invasive species and mainly in natural areas. And I want to share some of my knowledge with you as you seek your certification through the Fairfax Tree Rescuers Prism. Thank you for joining. So first, to start, I would like to ask a question. And by now, you probably have heard a lot more about invasive plants, and maybe you know, or you have referred to plants as aggressive. And think for a minute and see, do you think these are two terms that are the same? Give me a second. Well, in our the way that we refer to it in ecology or when it comes to landscapes, we don't use the term aggressive or for plants that are. We can use it for referring to plants that are invasive, but invasive is not usually used for plants that are native to an ecosystem. So these are two different terms. An invasive plant did not evolve in the ecosystem where it is invading. And that is the difference between aggressive and invasive plants. So invasive plants can be aggressive. They are aggressive. But on top of that, they are just not from that ecosystem. They're invaders. Okay, so that is the main difference. So how do they impact our ecosystems? Because they are aggressive, and they grow vigorously and overtake areas, they end up displacing our native plants, the plants that have evolved in our ecosystems where we live. So invasive plants are plants out of place. And they lack the natural predators because they did not evolve in this area, which means that they are not vulnerable to predation or other losses or diseases or anything like that, unlike the plants that are native to our systems. Okay, so that may seem as a landscape professional, maybe that seems like that could be a good thing, right? And that's why a lot of these plants were placed into areas. They wouldn't be eaten, and they grow very well. So it seems like a great deal. Problem is that we live in an ecosystem, and in ecosystem, everything that is there depends and has evolved with each other, including practices that people had over thousands of years. They affected these ecosystems. So not having these relationships throws a system in things are always changing, so I hesitate to say that it's not a balance, but it throws it further out of whack. And if you want to imagine each ecosystem being a puzzle, right, that makes an image, and each one of those pieces has a connection. Those are the connections that in the ways that things depend on each other. Now, if you have a puzzle from another, or puzzle pieces from another puzzle, trying to make them fit into your puzzle won't work. In fact, they displace those, and that image is then lost, right? So it's a similar thing that happens. And when we talk about vines and shrubs, we are actually talking about even a further danger, and that is that the vines and shrubs tend to also damage already established plants like our trees, and that becomes a big problem too. as they overwhelm and don't allow things to grow. What remains is not a habitat anymore. If we only have invasive plants, things that are not from this area, the dense shrubs that grow block the light from, and seedlings can grow in those areas. The vines cover the ground and climb over the trees. Forests are without regeneration. So this is how we lose our forests. And so perfectly nice forest becomes something that's damaged. The vines that climb the trees will then start blocking the light from, to get to those tree leaves. And even though it looks green, that's the vine, not the tree. And the tree itself is becoming weaker, making it vulnerable to damage from storms, the winds and ice damage. And eventually this becomes a risk, right? They will also, some of the vines will constrict around the trunks and further damage the tree over time. The shrubs themselves that are growing on the ground, as mentioned, will, block seedlings from regenerating that forest. But then also, as they start crowding out other things, they become wildfire risk, or in some cases, some of these non-native invasives may have shallower roots than our natives because they're the ones that are growing really quickly, and so that destabilizes the soils. So we lose more soil through runoff. And what remains is green, but not a habitat. So green desert. All the healthy trees are suffering and no longer healthy. There's less leaf litter. You end up having all of the wildlife, mainly insects that are feeding on that would feed on these plants, to no longer have that food source, or have less of it, and then that affects that other species. And so the ones that are able to survive are usually ones that we don't really like rodents and ticks. And yes, that should matter to gardening professionals, because this eventually does become a liability in an area, right? With the non-native invasive plants, especially the vines, becoming an issue, damaging trees, becoming expensive to control. And you may, homeowners will end up having a risk in their own yards from a tree that had been a valuable part of their yard to becoming a liability. And so preventing this is much better, more economical, and just, all around better visually too, aesthetically. And there's an opportunity for landscape professionals too. The awareness of invasive plants makes you be a step ahead, because people are beginning to learn more and more about invasive plants and the damage that they do, and they want to do something about it. They want to remove them as they're helping these natural areas and parks remove the invasives. They want to do that in their yards too. And so your knowledge elevates your reputation. But there's also other ways that as a professional you can help this trend of invasives taking over. Most of them have come from the nursery industry and being placed in people's backyards or common areas, and they escape into our natural areas. So we can improve this predicament by not using invasive species, right? And especially the ones that are most aggressively invasive. And and keep in, like in this case, we have burning bush that was used on as a hedge that has escaped into a natural area. As we work with, when we have a lot of materials that are picked up, whether it's from pruning, or if you're, gathering things in an area and you notice that what you're gathering is in non-native invasive, you want to be able to know that and bag it and throw it and not compost it. You can also remove those pieces of vine and other things from your truck, securing it so it doesn't fly off to other areas, cleaning your tools, your clothing, shoes, all of that, so you don't spread invasives to other sites. So those are big things that you can do just in your management of your work area. Here's another opportunity. If there is soil disturbance, so one, you want to avoid doing too much soil disturbance, but if there has been one, so whether a tree has been down and now you're called to take care of that, suggesting that a native plant be put there and replaced sooner than later keeps other invasives from growing in that area, because they're invading an area in an area that has been disturbed, where the soil has been disturbed, is easier to invade. So that's one way to kind of stem that problem. And one of the best strategies is to keep our native plants healthy, right? There are already some areas where there are great native plants that are established, bigger trees or shrubs and other things. And knowing how to care for them also lets people know that you are a knowledgeable professional, not using volcano mulching or topping trees. Those are practices that are not natural and they hurt the vegetation. So you can use that QR code to gather more information about pruning and other things like that from for arborists. Okay, so the next bit here is actually a little bit more technical. We're going to look at ways of identifying the non-native invasive in plants in general. Plants in general, like, these are good techniques on how to identify them. But I'm going to go over some things that we're going to be observing, and then we're going to review a few of the invasive vines and shrubs that you should know. There are many more, but this is kind of to get you started, okay? So there are some techniques that are used, and they have to do with observing different parts of the plants. The first we can talk about is looking from a distance. You may observe the growth habit. So is and since we're talking about vines and shrubs, are either of them, well, mainly for this one, are they climbing? Are they sprawling? Are they forming dense thickets? Are they, wrapping around a tree or not? Like, just knowing how it's growing can identify some plants or be part of that identification. Looking at the leaves, if they're available, is very useful too. So things to know, leaves can be either simple, where you have the leaf attached to the stem, like a single leaf, or you can have compound leaves, which means two or more that all attach to one petiole that attaches to the stem. And so knowing whether it's a simple or a compound, that's what we're talking about. So simple leaves, compound leaves. Are the leaves placed, whether it's the compound or the simple leaf, placed opposite each other? or alternate to each other, or world. So the opposite, meaning that we have, let me use this here, we have them connected in one node on the stem, right? The petiole comes together and they're right across from each other. Alternate, there's only one node that connects to the branch, and for a world, it's a little bit hard to see, but there's 3 or more that are around that same one. It's useful to learn about leaf parts. So, you can get to way more in depth in this, but you should at least know that when somebody's talking about the tip, it just means this area right at the top of the leaf, and so you may refer to a pointed tip or a rounded tip. The opposite of that would be the leaf base, which is at the bottom, and the bottom of the leaf base is connecting to the petiole. The petiole is that area that connects to the stem. Midrib is that middle area right here, and the veins all come out of that midrib. And the margins are just the edges. Okay, so we can describe the margins, we can describe the veins, things like that. You can also observe whether these leaves are evergreen or they are or there aren't. And you can also look at the leaf shape and margin. So these are 3 different ones that look very different from each other, right? So looking at the stem and the bark is another clue, or another thing that we should notice. There are different colors that certain plants have, sometimes in different stages of their growth. Sometimes the texture can change or it's distinctive. Lenticules, or these little dots that kind of poke out, they are going to be sometimes visible, and so that would be something that identifies them. Do they have hairiness? Are they smooth? Those are things to think about. Also, if you break them, is there a pith that's open? Are there other little structures, like in this one with kind of a corking around the stem? Are there tendrils, and where are they coming from? You can even look at the roots. So if there's a potential for, you happen to either remove one or somehow you're looking, this is what you have, right? This may be useful in the winter, especially where you might not have other clues. How deep are the roots? So some of the invasives, like the myolamina, may have very shallow roots. So if it's actually harder to pull, then it's not going to be that, right? How much it's spreading, the color of it might give you different information. Do they have nodules? Things like that. We can also observe fruits and flowers if we're lucky. So this obviously requires right timing, and the fruits and flowers of these plants tend to be quite nice, because a lot of them, as I mentioned, come from the nursery trade. And so if people were really seeking these out because they wanted to have these plants in their yards, they might actually end up looking for something that's pretty. So they tend to be pretty or a little bit different. And so here are examples. So you want to note the color, the shape, when in the season they come up, the arrangement. Those are all things that you may want to note. Some of the plants may have thorns, in which case, you want to know whether they do or don't. So presence or absence of the thorns. If they do, what are the shape, the sizes, the color? and that can help distinguish between lookalikes. Okay, so we're ready for our first one that we're going to go over. And these are just who's who of different problematic vines and shrubs later. So this first one, you notice that it has these kind of interesting looking fruits that are between cream and blue and they tend to be shiny. And the name porcelain berry comes because of that. This plant, Ampelopsis glandulosa, porcelain berry, is in the grape family, kind of, or can be very much a look-alike to some of our native grapes, also, especially when it's younger. But these are certain clues that you can look for. There is an irregular shape to the leaf, so you could have one that has a lot of lobes, especially when they're younger, and then it ends up kind of closing up or really forming different leaves that are no longer showing that kind of leaf shape. But they are simple, so they're not going to be compound leaves. They're simple, and they are opposite from each other, so we don't have another leaf right across, right? So there's one. The stem is not necessarily smooth, but it's also not peeling like in grapes. The flowers are cream color. They're very small, and they're not really pointing down like they would in a grape. Leaves are opposite to the tendrils. I guess you can't really see that on this one, but there was another photo before that had that. Okay, so that's the porcelain berry. Another one that's pretty common is English ivy, Dara helix. And this one's an evergreen and has shiny leaves. They do also have irregular shape. However, most of the time people really see this type of leaf, and that's because the mature leaf is more oval shaped, and that tends to happen at higher heights. So as it climbs the tree, it may develop that kind of leaf as it's going to start fruiting. So the dark green becomes a little bit lighter, but still they're simple leaves, alternate leaves. So, and they all tend to be shiny and evergreen. You might have on the younger ones 3 to 5 lobes and oval shape for the older ones. Flowers tend to be small, green, yellow flowers and that produce the darker fruit. Again, that will happen only at a higher, when they're higher off the ground. And they, as they're running or climbing, they have shallow roots, so they're kind of easy to pull. And then they grab onto the tree. One thing that we don't want to do when trying to get this off of a tree is to pull it off, because it will also start scarring or hurting the tree. Another one is Euonymus fortunei, or winter creeper. Another that is evergreen, quite pretty leaf that has these very noticeable white veins that give it a certain look. Those are the younger leaves and the ones that you would find running. They are opposite from each other, so you have 2 nodes to the stem. They are simple leaves and slightly toothed edges. The flowers are small, green, yellow here, that then produce white pink fruits that will have red seeds that pop out. Sorry, it's having issue going to the next slide. Oops. Okay, sorry. Okay. We also have different wisterias that are invasive. And these are the Asian wisterias, Wisteria sinensis and floribundi, and then one that's a mixture, a hybrid. You can tell these wisterias apart from each other in a couple different ways, but generally it's kind of hard to do. You can look at the way that they climb up a tree, how they go up, the direction that they go is going to be different depending on which one it is. So the Japanese wisteria will head this way, and then the Chinese wisteria the other way. And they are not going to be, they're going to be lacking the tendrils as they go up. These are our first ones that we're seeing that have compound leaves. So you see, this is the entire leaf. These are leaflets. They make up a compound leaf. And they have slightly wavy margins. And the next one also will show us the flowers. So the Japanese wisteria tends to have these lighter flowers. The Chinese wisteria will have more purple. Oh my goodness, sorry. And the fruits will be flat, fuzzy, brown pods with fuzzy seeds. Another one of our invasives that is really fast growing and also part of the pea family is kudzu, or Aquaria montana. And this one is also referred as the vine that ate the South. So just by the extensive growth habit that it has. So perennial vine grows 18 to 30 meters per year, thick, mature stems. There are alternate, it's a little hard to see again, in their compound leaves, so 3 leaflets for a leaf, with the one that is at the front being a little bit separated from the other 2, a little bit like our poison ivy. And purple flowers, when you see them, they look like pea flowers. Flat, hairy pods with 3 seeds when they actually produce that. Cuts. One that is super common, we all have probably walked around and seen some of these, and it's Lonicera japonica, Japanese honeysuckle, very fragrant. The leaves are simple, they're opposite each other. So 2 come to the one stem. The leaves are semi-oval leaves, and it's a semi-evergreen. So it will kind of die back, but it will last quite a bit longer than most natives. So that also gives an opportunity to treat this on the times, to do less damage to the natives if it's treated like in the fall or going into winter. Reddish brown hairy stems. So if you were to touch it, it would be kind of fuzzy. Fragrant yellow, white or yellow flowers, and that produce then these little black fruits. One that is very, goodness, my slides aren't moving. One that is very distinctive is the Persicaria perfoliata, myelominate. It's an annual, which means that the roots are also going to be very shallow and easy to pull. It grows very quickly. The leaves are very distinct. It has this triangular shape, so very pointed tip. And the base is not flat, but it kind of forms this little arrow. Round green they also have a lot of these little barbs or thorns, if you want to think about it, all along. And these little ochrea, circular, that's the name for it, is circle around the stem. And those are very distinctive. So, and that's where the fruiting, the fruits kind of come from too. Celastrus orbiculatus, bittersweet, another one that's very common. And this one can act like a bush too. Can be either like a vine or a sprawling shrub. The leaves are simple, alternate, kind of elliptical. You do have that pronounced midrib, kind of light white, brown gray stems, and raised lenticels. So those are those dots right there that you would be able to kind of palpate and feel that. The flowers or the fruit, are orange, and they reveal red fruit under. So like the outside of the fruits are orange. And oh my goodness. Another one of our shrubs that is quite a prolific in their growth habit are autumn olive, Elaeagnus umbellata. This is a bush shrub, and has simple alternate leaves. So you can see that here. They're alternating. What's kind of one of the easy ways to tell it apart is if you turn the leaf over, it has this kind of white gray underside. The stems also have these the lenticels that you can kind of also palpate, and they appear a little bit like white dots. The flowers are very small, white, and they'll produce red fruit. Lonicera mackii, or Amur honeysuckle, same type of flowers as the other honeysuckle, which is very different than our native honeysuckle. Our native honeysuckle it has red flowers and attracts hummingbirds. So this one is a shrub as opposed to the vine that we looked at earlier for the Japanese honeysuckle. This is more of a shrub. And one of the things to look at is the stems have this hollow pith in the middle. So if you see that, a striated bark, and the leaves are also, just like the other one, going to be opposite from each other, and they're a little bit more pointed than the Japanese honeysuckle. Rosa multiflora, or multiflora rose, are going to be the only rose that we have around here that is so, and we can tell that it's not native because you can have multiple flowers in one. So usually our native roses are going to produce single flowers per stem area. So multi-stemmed shrub sometimes acts like a vine. Compound leaves, 5 to 11 toothed leaflets, as you can see here. This is another thing to note. You can look at the stem. It's green, and it's going to have the fringe stipules and curved thorns that are different than our native ones. Here are the colors for our stems. Pretty and fragrant flowers when they do produce. Euonymus alatus, burning bush. So burning bush because of the color that it turns, the leaves turn. So this, the fall turns to almost like a crimson red color. And the flowers are kind of insignificant, yellow, white, small, forms very dense shrubs and thickets. The scientific name Elatus refers to the ala, meaning winged, the wings that form around the stem. So, burning bush. Berberis thornburgi, Japanese barberry. This one, has been planted as hedge because of its thorns, very pokey, and it is one that's evergreen. When it gets out into natural areas, kind of a nasty one to come by. It's semi-evergreen, so I put in as a deciduous shrub, but you end up having these also be green, quite longer, single or triple spines, yellow inner bark. I think it's probably the way that the leaves kind of are come up. You don't see that around with many natives here. So bright red oval berries when they do fruit. Sorry, trying to go to the next slide. There we go. This one is kind of an interesting one because unlike some of the others, and this is what I'm ending on, because non-natives can come from even close ecosystems to ours. They don't have to be from just another country. So this one exists in the West Coast, but it's not native here, and it is invasive in our area. This is Mohinia bealii, leatherleaf mahonia. It's an evergreen shrub. And it does have these attractive bluish purple fruits. The leaves are similar to hollies, I guess, so it could be confused with that, especially our native holly. There's also non-native holly. They end up having pointy or spiny leaflets, so they're compound leaves, and they occur alternately from each other. They are also sessile. So what that means is all the other leaves have had a petiole that connects them to the stem, and you see these are connected straight to the stem, and that is different than our hollies, and one good identifying feature. And that's the end of our notable vines and shrubs. By no means all of them that are out there, but something to get you started and practicing ways that you can learn to identify these. And I just wanted to end with a little scene of better choices that can, like it said, if you build it, they will come. If you build habitat, they will come. And this is our call to action for everyone. Thank you so much, and I wish you luck with the rest of your certifications and other continued learning. Thank you.